Over the last few weeks and months, I had many of you guys asking me to do a beginner's video for DaVinci Resolve. Because even though the program is free to download, I mean, they do have the paid version, the studio version, which I highly recommend. The free version is free for life, but a lot of people feel a little bit daunted by it. You know, it can be a little bit intimidating. So I'm gonna give you everything that I think you need to get started. Now, for the sake of speeding things up, I'm gonna be using keyboard shortcuts. I'm not gonna be editing with a mouse, as a lot of people do. So I give you my keyboard shortcuts. You'll find a link in the description below. I strongly suggest that you download them and install them in DaVinci Resolve. I'm gonna show you how to do it. It's really simple and easy, and you'll be able to keep up with the pace. Before we even get started, the most essential thing to have in place is a good file management and structure, okay? This is essential. I'm gonna show you how I do my thing so that you can then replicate it at your end. It's gonna save you a ton of time and you'll be able to find whatever media clip or file in no time. There is nothing worse in life than looking for media that is scattered all over the place and you have absolutely no idea what it is. I like to always keep my media in an external drive. You can clearly see that I open a folder for every project that I do and everything is nicely filed, okay? So for instance, this project here is my camera and I have studio shots, then I have the talking heads, sound recording, footage from an iPhone 7, 13, Pocket 2 and so on. So everything is really nicely organized because this is really important when you go into DaVinci Resolve, because rather than ingesting files individually, you can literally drag and drop the entire project. So let's open a new project. We're gonna call it Demo Room and create. So you're going to be greeted with this window, and I would say do not panic if this looks alien, okay? The most important thing that you need to pay attention is this row here at the bottom, okay? So this window here, however complex it looks, this is purely for importing media from your local drive, which is here, into DaVinci Resolve. That's the whole purpose of this window, okay? This one is the cut. I never use it, so I'm not even going to touch it. This is the edit. This is where we're going to spend most of the time. This is where the magic happens, and I will go through everything quickly with you. Fusion is the After Effects version of DaVinci Resolve. This is advanced, so we're not even going to touch it. We're going to do a little bit of basic grading so that you have a basic understanding of what grading is all about. Sound editing, again, this is a huge part of DaVinci Resolve package, but we're just going to briefly touch it and then export window, okay? So first things first, there are several ways to bring footage into DaVinci Resolve. You can browse to wherever you have your media. Now, as you can see, these windows here, they show you metadata, so it shows you the frame rate that it was recording at, the resolution, the audio. So if I was to have some iPhone 13 footage, that would now be 4K, 25 frames a second, the codec. So, you know, it gives a little bit of information. You could easily do without it. You know, that's entirely up to you. Everybody has a different way of working. Now, you could potentially say, okay, well, I'm happy with this file and I'm just gonna drag it, okay? But the first thing that DaVinci is gonna tell you is that you shot it at a different frame rate than the default frame rate that DaVinci Resolve has, which is 24 frames per second. So it's asking you, do you want to change that to 24 or not? Either way, if you have a different frame rate than the default frame rate, you may have, or you might run into some audio syncing issues at some point during your edit, okay? So I don't like to do this. I like to then go back to my settings and set things correctly. So I shot it at 25 frames per second, so I set it at 25 frames per second, and the playback frame rate will match the project frame rate. I usually open 1080p with timelines. I don't do 4K. It's just pointless or idiotic, okay? You don't need that much resolution to do an offline edit. I set my timeline on my project 8-bit. I don't need 10-bit for editing. All my caching, I do that 422 LT. I don't need full res for caching. Again, we're doing offlining. Do one. Color management, I always do sRGB. And general options, in section of color, I untick this one and I tick this one, okay? So these are the settings that I always do, regardless of whatever the project. You could save these now. As you can see, I have them saved there. And all you need to do is just click on it, press load, and it will load those settings. Okay, so we're just gonna save that. And now what we can do is, instead of dragging files individually, because let's say that you're happy with all of this and you say, well, I want to here, and then, oh, you know, I have all my studio shots, I also want them here, and then, oh, I did all my outdoors and I also want them here, and things start to look really, really messy and very unorganized. Okay, so we don't want to do that. What we want to do is, because you should have had everything nicely organized, as you can see here. Okay, that's my entire project. You just literally get into the project, select all the folders and drag them onto the master, and just like that, all your media gets transferred directly into DaVinci Resolve. All the folder structure, everything is there, ready for you to start editing. Okay, all your sound, your clips and everything. Now, for the sake of this tutorial, I am giving you my keyboard shortcuts. Okay, I will have a download link in the description of this video. I strongly recommend that you download this and set them up. It's very simple to do. You come to DaVinci Resolve, keyboard customization, you get these three dots here, import presets from whatever folder that you save them into. Okay, this is extremely important if you want to follow this tutorial, and if for some reason you want to change any of my keyboard shortcuts, it's really simple. You can say, well, clear in and out, or I've got them here, but you can come here, says, well, let's say that this one, clear video in and out, clear video in and out, says I don't want Z, I want it to be shift S. Okay, so you just come here, cross that, and then just do shift S, and it will save it just by typing it. Okay, now in my case, I am very happy to do what it was. I'm just gonna cancel. Okay, and with that being said, we're gonna move on to the edit section, and for you to follow nicely what I'm doing, I'm just gonna bring this sort of keyboard here, and every single keystroke that I press, okay, you can see that. Okay, it will be easy for you to follow. So the edit window, here you have all your media and the little mini preview. If you drag anything onto this window, you're gonna have a preview of whatever it is that you put in there. You can either drag it or double click here. This window will preview whatever it is on your timeline. Okay, now before we move on to editing, let's quickly go through these buttons here. Okay, so this is your selecting tool, and as you can see, every time you hover your mouse, you get the name of whatever the button is and the shortcut on your keyboard. So I've got this mapped to 5, this is my trimming mode, I've got it to T, dynamic trimming to F, blade or cut, I've got it mapped to H. These are really important. This has the insert, override and replace, and then you have a snapping, link, lock. These are markers and flags. These are really important if you want to make some annotations along the way. I'll show you later what the purpose of this is. And this is for the zooming in and out of your timeline. So let's say, for instance, that you want to bring some talking heads. Okay, let's just get something going. Okay, so we're just gonna come and we're just gonna do in point, and then we're gonna come and we're gonna do alt point. So the marking is I and the mark out is O. Okay, and to go to the in point is Q and to go is W. And if you want to play between the in and out point and nothing else in here, okay, just hit the E. Okay, and you play that. So obviously I'm not interested in that clip. So let's say that I'm interested in this. I'm gonna put an in here and then I'm gonna put an out there. Okay, so marking is I, mark out is O, and if I want to go to the in point, I press Q, the out point is W, and if I want to play the media just between the in and out point, I hit the E.
Pretty
okay?
remarkable what Sion has done.
So I don't play media from here or here and then guess what it is. Okay, now normally you see a lot of videos, some people say you need to drag it into a timeline. Don't do this. This is so inaccurate. Look, it's just things are all over the place, the mouse goes out of whack. I mean, it's just don't do this. Okay, you basically get your selected in and out points and then you just hit B and it goes into the timeline. Okay, whatever this red bar is, you're gonna have as many of those files as you send. What we just did is this button, override. Okay, and there's Splice In and replace, which we'll go through this in a minute. Okay, so let's say that we have this other clip and we're just gonna bring it here, and this is a more A roll, and I'm talking, and let's just bring a bit more, Let's just do another one there. These are clips that I have pre-selected from a previous project that I recorded, so the in and out points are more or less already set. But anyway, so you get the gist of it, okay? You would have yourself, you know, 50, 100 different clips. Let's bring this one here. Let's say that I am happy until there, okay? There, bam. Okay, so that's my timeline, okay? Now, you can zoom in and out with your mouse. Again, this is really painful, okay? Because nobody does. And then you can do all sorts of highlights and zoom in. Okay, look, Command K, you zoom out. Command L, you zoom in, okay? If you want the entire timeline, Command or /, okay? If you want to go to the beginning of the timeline, you just press FN and then the left button. If you want to go to the end, FN and to the end. Okay, so it's just really use the keyboard at all times, please, because it's going to speed up your editing big time. Okay, so anyway, let's say that you have your A roll, and please always try to keep the audio for a particular character or scene in its own individual track. Okay, because there might be things that you want to do to a certain scene or person's footage that you don't need to other one, and if you have the audio all over the place, it's going to be a real mess. For instance, in this video, the audio is slightly out of sync.
All axes
you can see here.
Lockable, and the actual locks are really good.
So it's about a couple of frames out. Okay, so what you can do is roll the footage. Okay, now at the moment the audio and video are linked. I want to unlink them, okay? So I'm just gonna hit Command Option L, and I'm just gonna unlink or decouple the video from the audio, okay? And I'm gonna do the same thing for every other one, okay? Because I want to affect the audio only, okay? Basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shift all the audio bits 2 frames to the right, okay? So I'm just gonna come here, for instance. I'm just gonna do all of them at the same time, twice L, and that's it. Okay, so now I'm selecting only the audio, okay? And look what happens. You come into trim mode, okay? We're not actually gonna trim, but we're gonna basically rotate the clip on its own, okay? We get this logo with the 2 arrows, click on there. I'm just gonna go 1 and 2. Did you see that movement? Okay, you see that? Okay, 1 and 2. And look now.
It's almost 3 times as much, so you would expect that.
And you can see when I hit the P that now it's in sync.
So you would expect that.
Okay, so now the footage is in sync. Let's stay with trimming. Let's say that you come to this shot and you realize that you want to...
2 points.
Okay, so that's...
Let's do it.
I want to delete all of that. There's 2 ways you can do this.
Use more than 2 points.
You can just basically come here and say do a cut, which is H, and select the 2 clips and then shift and delete, and it will basically delete and shift everything to the left. Okay,
more than 2 points. Let's do it.
Okay, but that's really, as you can see, it's better, but that's not really very accurate. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to hit the T, which is the trimming, and you come here and you select that one and that one. Okay, and now you can do it either with the mouse, okay, to where the bar is, or you can say I set the bar here and I hit P, and it will go to the bar, or you can do it manually. You can go 10 by 10. If I was to, for instance, instead of holding the shift, I would just do it single. That would be single frames. You can just go 10 by 10. And you can zoom in and you can get a preview here where it tells you the different shots as previews. And then you can just literally come here. Say, well, I want it a bit more. There you go.
To use more than 2 points.
There you go. So 2 more.
More than 2 points. Let's do it.
Okay, so that's looking better. Let's say that you come to the next one. Same thing. I want to delete all of that. Obviously, there are moments where you can truly and well do that.
I would have loved to record my sound with. I would have loved.
For instance, this one, I just literally want to move the in point here. So you get it in the middle there, and then just a couple of frames. So 3.
Sound with. I would have loved.
That's better. There.
I usually record my sound with. I would have.
Okay, that's good. One thing that you can do as well is select that and then Command G, and you get a audio dissolve, and then do it really little, like 2 frames or 3 frames.
Usually record my sound with.
And that's a better transition on audio. Okay, so the same applies here.
Notes can be set through. may not be willing to pay. Modes can be set through the LCD screen, and you get the
So let's say that I want to lose all of that and start there, okay? So again, I can come to the trimming, select the not. If I do this is gonna be shortened and this is gonna remain the same. I want this to remain the same and that one to be shortened. So I can select where I want it to start and then hit P, and that's done. Or I can just go with the mouse and there, okay?
not be willing to pay, and you get the usual.
Let's say that now you want to bring B-roll, okay? You want to obviously bring it in different video tracks because you don't want to be overwriting what it is that you have here. So you bring, say, audio tracks as well, stereo, bring a couple just in case, okay? So you select the video track and the audio track that you want the audio to come into. So let's say that you build your B-roll. So I want the B-roll to start on this section here, okay? So I'm just gonna do that shot there. And I'm gonna come here and let's play E. Yeah, I want that. So you see I'm adding files on top, okay? And that one, I want it there. So I'm doing a quick montage, okay? And that one, I want it there. And that one, in and out, there. Okay, so that's kind of giving me a bit of a quick montage, okay? Now let's say for instance that I realize, oh my god, I just missed out and I want to have an extra A-roll here, okay, in between this one and that one. You can come to the talking heads, select whichever it is that you want to do, okay? So that's a bit long. Okay, let's say that one. Okay, so now this is where the V comes in. Select the audio where you want the audio and the video to come, and that's it. You see, I spliced in an extra bit of video and sound, okay? So that's what splicing in is for. You need to be careful, for instance, not doing that while you're doing your B-roll, because let's say that you do that, you press V by mistake, and even if you have selected your correct audio and video, look what happens, it splits the video. So you need to be careful. So this is going on top. You want it to be on top, unless you want this one, for instance, to be here in between the text. That's something that you and only you can decide, okay? Now let's say that you come here and you realize actually I am very happy with the shot, but I don't want this clip, I want a different one, okay? I want this one, for instance, yeah, and I want it from there, just when the finger comes in. So this is the very powerful button, okay, is the replace, okay? So let's say that you're very happy with this clip, I don't want it to be any longer, any shorter, you want it to do it really quick. It's very simple. You select your in point where you want that clip to start, and then you just replace it, just like that. Yeah, I hit this button there, okay, rather than pressing this button. And what you just did is you just replace this the previous clip with a new one, okay, rather than having to come here and guess where the end is gonna be, and then having to do something like this and then try and work out if you did it the right way or not. Well, that's pure chance, really, that I set the out point at the right place. But normally you wouldn't have that. You would maybe come here and you say there, and then you now need to bring it here. You know, it's just too much. I seriously recommend that you use the replace button over anything else, okay? Now, one thing that is really important as well is, let's say that you come here and says, you know what, I'm very happy with this shot and, you know, the length of the shot, but I want it to start rather than from here, I want it to start when the hand comes in, okay? And rather than having to then come here and then go there and then set the keyframe from there, do some cutting and extend it, that's just, it's just too much, okay? So when you come here, you select these two, you hit your trimming, okay, zoom in a little bit, you get your two buttons there, and now you can just go, as you can see here, I'm going in chunks of 5, but I can now just go one by one, and I want it to start there. So I am basically rotating the clip on itself, okay?
Now you might open
there you go. So that's it. That's a really important one. Not very many people use it, and I use it all the time. It's so helpful. And again, I might come here and says, you know what, I'm happy with this shot, but I want the cut to be a bit earlier, so I can just trim that, and there you go. So that's that. And then you say, but you know what, now I'm happy, but I want this one to be shorter and this one remain the way it is. I can just hit the trimming, selecting that sort of arrow, and then I say I want it 10 frames. Okay, so there you go. That's
simple fact.
so that's how trimming works. Now, next thing that you need to be very mindful of, okay, and that is sound, okay? So you can come here, select all of them. I want it to be a bit louder, so I can come here, says I want it to be 10, okay? So I'm affecting all the clips rather than do them individually. Another thing is this snapping. So you might say, yeah, it would be really nice for me to be a bit more accurate on in between the cuts, but this thing keeps snapping to the beginning of the clip or the end of the clip. So you just hit this button, that one there, and now you can go really smooth, and you can then re-engage it and it's snapping. Okay, now this is really helpful to be really quick and to move around in your timeline, because you can with the mouse accurately go to the beginning or the end, or you can just hit the N or the M moves forward to the next cut, or the end to the previous cut, okay? So this is really quick way to move on your timeline, okay? So again, these are shortcuts that you have on my keyboard, and you can easily go through them. So now let's say that you have these shots and you realize that, you know, it's really nice. I don't want this shot anymore because it doesn't go with the project. It's redundant, okay? So you can either delete it, and then you can just hit the space and then shift delete, and it will bring the audio and then the video, but that's obviously very slow. You can just literally select both clips and then shift delete, and it will sort of ripple delete everything. Now another thing that you might want to do is you might want to avoid a jump cut, okay?
Let's do a
So you say, you know, that's very nice, but I want this one to not be a jump cut. So this is where the inspector window comes in handy, because let's bring this down a bit more. There. You can come here to the inspector window and say, well, I want this one to be a little bit zoomed in, and I want this to be down towards the eye level so that it matches the eye level. Okay, so
let's do it.
that doesn't look very natural. Let me bring it down a bit more.
You may not be willing to pay. Let's do it.
So that looks a bit unnatural. I could probably go even further down, but obviously, as you can see, you need to be careful. You can't just go always down, okay?
May not be willing to pay. Let's do a quick.
So you see what I'm doing? Rather than using my mouse, you know, to go back, I literally just use 10 frames back or 10 frames forward, okay?
May
And
or
then
may not be willing to pay.
play back.
Let's do a quick
Okay,
comparison.
so that's looking better, yeah? Now, let's say, for instance, that you have a timeline with 200 of these clips, okay, or 50 or 60. You know, you don't want to go manually adjusting every single one that you want to be sort of zoomed in or punched in. So what you can do is you can highlight the clip, say copy, and let's say that you want this one. Let's say that this one had 3 different clips, okay, for the sake of this, okay? You can say, okay, well, I've copied this clip and I want this one and that one to be sort of zoomed in, okay? So you just come here and then say paste attributes, because you copied the file, but you're only gonna paste the attributes, not the file itself. So I want the video attributes. This could be the zoom, the cropping, whatever you might have done to the other clip, and then apply, and then automatically those 2 clips are already zoomed in, okay? And this could be the same as 30, 40, 50. This is a really strong window. It's really worth learning. Another thing that you can do is, let's say that you have lots of clips and suddenly you don't want to be all static. You can say, well, I want this clip, for instance, to start, I highlight this, and I want this to sort of slightly zoom in. So you can select your endpoint keyframe at 1, okay? And now you can go to the end clip. Now, I do not recommend you that you come to the very end of the frame. I recommend that you do the very end and then 1 back, okay? Because otherwise you're not gonna be seeing what it is that you're doing on this clip, because the next clip is the next frame, which is the very last frame. You're already seeing the previous clip. So to the end and then 1 back, okay? So M and then 1 back. So now I want this one at 1.05. and this one is slightly down so that it looks natural, okay? So then what happens now is you go from here.
One that I usually record my sound with. I would have loved to see you.
And as you can see, there is a slow zooming in, okay?
For the mic to have
And obviously this is pointless for this particular shot, but if you have a static scenery shot or establishing shot, it could be really nice to add a little bit of movement. So you do it with the inspector window. Let's say that you want to bring some music because you want to have some music in the background, master music and background. And let's say that I want to have this track here, and I want this track to be only affecting the in and out points there, and I want it to be on track 3 because I want it completely separate. So I'm just gonna press B, and obviously this is gonna be very loud, and if I drag this and I see A3, you can clearly see that that's way too loud. So you come to inspector and you bring it down, usually to -35 or -40, to sort of be in the background. You see?
Way
So
better in my opinion than the smooth.
at a decent level. You might want to sort of even -45.
But then again,
You can decide that, okay? Now, let's say that you want another track, say from here to here, okay? So you say your in and out points, and then I want that track from that point on. Just do a different in point. There, I want that one there. I'm just gonna do -45, okay? However, let's say that, for instance, you decide, for this first clip, I want the music to be punchier and then sort of deep down into the background, okay? So normally a lot of people say you need to do keyframes, okay? You sort of need to come here, and this is where releasing the snap to snapping is quite helpful, okay? If you were to do keyframes, okay? So a lot of people say you need to set a keyframe there, 3 frames there, is another keyframe there, and then a keyframe there, and then a keyframe there, okay? And then what you would do, you zoom in, and then you say this one and that one, and I bring it up, okay? And then this one, I bring it here, and that's how you would normally. People will tell you, okay, but this is okay if you do this like one-off, okay? I am not gonna tell you to do that because that's just literally a waste of time, okay? I'm gonna engage snapping. So what you're gonna do is you can create a cut, select this one, and this one you want it louder, so you say I want it to be -25, okay? -15, so, and now you can see the waveform getting bigger. And now what you need to do is just hit audio dissolve, and just make it a bit smaller there, 9 frames, and that's it. That's your audio file.
you can now you might open the app and decide that you are totally fine with it. I mean, it does
There.
what it.
Okay, so now another thing that you might say is, well, I want this file to the audio to sort of fade out before the other one sort of comes in, so it's a nicer transition. So what you do is you do your trimming, but instead of engaging the trimming, you keep it on the selection tool, and then you just do one to the left, okay? So now you have a little gap there, and then you just do Command G, and then you get it an audio dissolve, okay? And you could possibly do another audio dissolve on coming in, okay? And then you get your
The legs are
transition.
so long that you can now you might open the app.
Okay. Now this is really helpful. For instance, look, going back to timelines, and I recommend that you always do your timelines in a separate folder. Okay. Let's say that you have a project, like this is a video that I recently did, and I have music that kicks in when I have a new section. Okay. So I have music here.
Balancing this gimbal.
Okay, so that's what I did exactly, rather than having to do keyframes. Because what happens with keyframes? Let's say that suddenly you realize that the background music is too low or too loud. And what are you gonna do? You're gonna be going keyframe by keyframe by keyframe. That's gonna take you, hours. You just basically, if you follow my method, you select the files that you want. Okay, so I've got them all at -35, and I just hit 0, and suddenly they're all at the higher volume. Or say I want them to be quieter. Yeah, you adjust them, all of them, rather than then having to go, to the keyframe. And you can clearly see that it's the same setup that I just told you. Okay, so one clip ends, and louder starts, and then it dips down.
This gimbal is
Okay, so it's the same principle. Okay. Let's go back to our demo. Now, if you have in and out points, you can clear them by just doing G, okay? And as you can imagine, you could be laying another track, say from here to the very end. Let's bring some music, background music too. Let's get rid of the inspector, and I want that music there. Again, you need to be careful, because if you overlook the fact that you have selected A1 and then you put the music and then you overwritten the music, okay? So that's why you need to select carefully the audio track that you want the audio to go into, and then bam, okay? And then we come here and we do -45. There you go, yeah? And if you want a transition between those two, you select the cut and then audio transition. Now, this is interesting, okay? Sometimes you might get this for both video and audio. And you're going to ask yourself, what the hell this means, okay? So what this means is that if, let's say that we come and I want to see the first frame of this file, okay? Just hit D, okay? D means in my keyboard is match frame, okay? So as you can see, this is matching. When I press D here, it's matching this frame there, okay? So if I put my line there, it's coming there, okay? So you want to come to the beginning and say, why is this happening, okay? There, on my audio, okay? If you were to select video, obviously it defaults to the first frame of the video or whatever frame that you want it to be, okay? But you select the audio and then. So what is basically the trimming telling you when you do the dissolve is that because you are at the very beginning of the file, you have left no room for the dissolve to take effect. So for instance, if instead of starting here at the beginning, I had started here, okay, where the first bit starts, yeah? Let's say that I bring my file there, and now I'm gonna overwrite this file, okay? Now, if I come here, I do -45, and if I was now to do the audio dissolve, look what happens. See, no problem, because I left room on either end. If I come to the end clip of this audio, hit D, you see this audio, the end clip is here, there is plenty of room there. And if I come here and I hit D, you see there is plenty of space there. So this is something that might throw you off, and this is the reason why, okay? Now, let's say that, for instance, I am very happy with the volume of this clip, but I want it to be different, okay? So I can come here and say, well, you know what? I want the piece of music to start there, and I want this music. So rather than then now having to bring the audio, you can just set your import, you highlight this one, and then you just press the replace clip. I've got it mapped to this one. When you replace a clip, okay, imagine that what you're doing is you have your clip and then you have an effects piled upon it, okay? So imagine that you could have audio effect, a pan, a pitch, or whatever. So imagine that those effects are like layers on top of the audio file, okay? And the same applies for video file, okay? If you were to do a video replacement, okay? But in this instance, we're doing an audio replacement. So what you're doing is you are literally just replacing the very bottom layer, which is the audio file. So every other effect or adjustment that you had done on top, it will stay the same. This is really, really handy because you might just want to swap the file, but you don't want to go and do all the other adjustments that you would need to do if, for instance, if instead of doing a replace, you had set your in and out points. So I want to replace this clip, okay? And I just do an overwrite, okay? I then now have to come here and then do -45, and if I did some panning, I need to do this and this and that, whatever adjustments, okay? So now this is your master reset. If you messed up both on audio and video, click this button, it will reset everything there, okay? Now let's just undo this, and so it's very simple. You set your in point and you highlight the clip that you want, and then bam, that's it, done. Okay, so this is why the replacing button is really, really powerful, okay? Let's say that you bring some video clips and then suddenly they're on mono. So you might have recorded your talking heads in stereo, and then suddenly this clip is in mono. It's only playing on one channel. You know, like for instance, look at this one, okay? Let me just mute this and mute the music. Yeah, you see, that's on mono, okay? And it's gonna sound funny. So it's very simple. Just highlight the clip and hit A. It's gonna bring the clip attributes, and this just tell it to, I want it to be mono, and embed the one, and that's it. And just like that, you converted your mono to stereo. And if you have a number of them, you just select all of them, hit A, stereo, and there you go. Now they are all in stereo, just like that. This is another helpful tip that might save you a lot of time and pulling your hairs. And let's say that, for instance, now you want to add some graphics, for instance, some titles. Okay, so we remove the media pool, and up here, and we do effects. So let's say that we do some titles. Yeah, let's that one. Okay, so we just drag it on. Okay, now if you want to have better playback, I suggest that you go from off to half resolution. For offline, you're not going to have any problem.
Let's do a quick comparison here.
So we hit that one, we go into Inspector. Inspector is where all the adjustments happen. As you can see, that it changes whether it's sound, video, title, and so on, okay? So it's just going to call it demo test, yeah? Here you can change the color. You can do all sorts of things here. You can change the size. You can say all sorts of things. And if you mess up, you just hit this dot here, and it resets back to what it was before. So let's say that I'm happy with this, but I want to sort of make a bit there. I want to increase it, but I want this cool text effect, but I want it lower third. So you move from title to settings, and there are two ways to go about it. You can click here and then move it there. But as you can see, you might get to a point that is really difficult to be accurate with the mouse. So bring it around, roughly around where you want it to be, and click that one. And then you can be much more accurate if you come here and then just do like this, okay? And you can still edit this. You can say, well, I want the tracking to be even a bit less or bigger or whatever, okay? And that's how you add titles to your timeline. Okay, now I recommend that you do anything to do with titles and graphics at the very end, because it can be processor intensive. And I'm running a screen recording software, so sometimes performance drops by about 15 to 20%. Performance does get affected, and depending on how intensive the animation is, you might have normal playback or you might not have normal playback, okay?
Let's do a quick comparison here.
Now, let's say, for instance, that you want to play a screen recording, okay? Because you might have done this screen recording of your phone, of your computer, whatever it is. So I have a section here, and everything that you bring needs to be really nicely organized. So I have my screen recordings here, and let's say that in this section, I want this entire section to have this screen recording, okay? So R is going to select this clip, the in and outs, by hitting R, and I can just come here, and I want it to start there, so I want it to be on V2, and I'm just going to go B. Now what happens is, as you can see, you see these bars here, and now there are two ways you can go about this. You can come to the inspector, go to the bottom, scale in, fill, but you might be losing, as you can see, a lot of the information or the footage on the side. One thing that you can do is you can come here and zoom in a little bit, just about there, okay? Bring this one up, so shift and then push it up. And shift is really cool because it allows you to go up and down without having to worry about where the mouse is, okay? If you don't do this, it's really, really messy and inaccurate, okay? So shift and then one up, and then what you want to do is, again, hit R, because this is the clip that I want, and then come to generators, and I want a solid color behind. I want this one to go all the way there. So now you have a black background, okay? And you can decide whether this one is, we want it down there or up there, okay? So that's how you do your screen recording, okay? So essentially this is it, okay? Now we're not gonna touch graphics, we're gonna do grading, okay? Just briefly, okay? Let's just this shot, okay? We don't need to go into the gallery at the moment, and I'm just gonna, you can have the timeline there and the clip, but for the purpose of what I'm about to show you now, I'm gonna remove that. But I'm gonna show you now We don't need that. Okay, so this is grading. Okay, I'm not really going to spend too much time on this. I'm just going to literally show you the absolute very basics. Okay, 1023, this is your maximum highlights, 0 your maximum darks. Okay, so anything that goes below 0, as you can see here, is pure black. Okay, you see this section here is pure black. Okay, there is no information there. I can zoom in as far as much as that's just black. Okay, now we don't want that. Let's hit this fit. Okay, we don't want that. Let's just reset that node. Okay, now the same applies to highlights. Okay, if I bring this up over 1023, that is white. There is no information there. That is totally white. Okay, we don't want that. Okay, we want our highlights never to go over 1023 and our darks never to go below 0 unless you genuinely want that effect. Okay, so quickly here, color temperature, maybe touch it a little bit there, bring the color up, maybe even more, 70, just do the mid-tones a little bit, and that one. You see, I'm just making sure that I'm just touching the 0, yeah, and obviously make sure that I don't have that dopey face there. Performance a bit slow because obviously I've got my recording software running, but this would normally be much quicker. And again, grading, you don't need to be a full res. As you can see, I'm doing half resolution. You know, it's more than enough to get an idea. Okay, very interesting. As you can see here, I was grading this clip, but when I press play, it went crazy. Okay, this happens because you have in your timeline an in and out point. Okay, if I was to delete that, I come here now, I get to preview the file that I'm working on. Okay, you might be spooked about suddenly things happening on your screen, and it's because of that. And you don't need to clear the in and out points here. You can literally, the moment something like this happens, okay, you're working on a clip, you hit the spar bar and suddenly it goes where? You just basically hit the G to clear the in and out points, click the clip that you were working on, and then it will work fine, okay? So this shows you the before and after. And if you were to do in several different aspects of your grading, you would have different nodes, 0 nodes. You could have one for changing the color of the top, and another one for if you're doing some facial effects, because you do have face effects in DaVinci Resolve. It's really incredible. You could literally say, well, I want to refine the face, and it's going to analyze the face, and I just don't want that anymore, but it's going to show, and then you can do all sorts of crazy things here. You can adjust, as you can see here, it's affecting there, and the contrast, and you can do the mid-tones, and you can do all sorts of crazy things, and you can then come to the lip and then do hue on the lip, and you can do saturation. I mean, you can affect the blushes, the forehead, the cheek. I mean, you can do so many things. Anyway, but that's just another whole game, and we don't need to really go into this. Okay, we're just gonna delete that. For your basic grading, this would probably be enough, and that's maybe a bit too much. A lot of the digital cameras, what you might find is that if you actually decrease the contrast and stay within the 0, it might actually look better. But another thing is if you do people and faces, maybe do a little bit of mediums there, -20. It might kind of soften the skin a little bit, you know, not that I have bad skin myself, but you know, it might actually help. So you see before and after, it's a tiny bit, but you know, in grading, every little helps. Okay, so that was the before, and that's the after. That looks much better. Okay, and another thing that you can do is, once you're happy with this clip, say that I want to replicate to all of them, you can just go and select all of them, this, then right click and apply grade, and then suddenly all of them have the same grade applied. Okay, that's really powerful. Okay, and then you can come here and says, I want this one, that one, and that one, and always apply the same one, the last clip that you right click is the one that is going to apply the effects to all of the other ones, and then just apply click. And if for some reason you realize, oh, actually I made a mess on this clip, always reset the node. Okay, so this is grading, and with this you can get going in no time. Okay, now sound. If you keep your audio nice and tidy, for instance, this is the audio for A-roll. As you can see here, audio for A-roll. My B-roll has a separate track and the audio has a separate track. You can come here, and then rather than affecting individual clips, because your timeline might be 20 minutes, half an hour. I mean, can you imagine if I had to individually apply my video editing to all of this? Okay, it would be insane. And this is nothing. I mean, I've had timelines where you have 5, 10, 15 different people dialogues. It's just really complicated. Okay, so let's say that I have my timeline and I want to affect only the audio on here, because for instance, maybe I feel that there is a bit of an echo. Okay, so I can just literally bring my files and I say, you know what, I want to remove the echo, but only for this clip. Okay, so I can just turn it on, just go like this, and this is a plugin that I paid good money for, and just like that,
3 times as much.
I'll remove. You can
expect all axes are lockable, and the actual locks are.
There you go. So all my clips on this track, I'm affecting everything on this track and nothing else. Okay, you might have audio 2, and obviously I have audio 3, 4, you know, and you can say, you know what, I want to affect something else, you know, I want to do a little bit of noise reduction. Okay, so you know, if that is the case, you can just go like that.
You get a much more extensive.
Okay, you can say, well, actually that's very loud, you know, so I want that audio too.
The range of features that you
See,
get.
that's now a lot lower. And here, obviously, the audio 1, you can say, well, I want the equalizer and I want to make it sound a little bit fuller, so you can pretty much do this, and suddenly
all axes are lockable, and the actual locks are really good.
So sometimes the changes are very subtle. Obviously that would be helpful if I do like that, and I can bring it here.
They don't slide or become loose, and you don't feel confident that the gimbal is safe when locked.
Okay, anyway, so that's how you do audio editing. And yes, you can do editing clip by clip. You have all the sound effects here and all of that, but whatever it is that you have here, yeah, you also have it here. Okay, and you'll be affecting the entire audio tracks. If you do effect by effect, you can just drag it onto whatever effect, whatever clip you want, and you will apply that effect only to that particular clip. But I think it's much quicker to do entire tracks, unless you have a track dedicated to, say, someone speaking for 1 or 2 clips. You might want to do that individually, or a particular track that requires attention because only that track had problems with audio noise, or maybe something that went wrong and you need to fix it. But once you do your editing, it's much quicker to apply effects to entire tracks. Okay, the one thing that you want to make sure, okay, is that nothing ever goes over the yellow. Okay, maybe just touching a little bit the red every now and then. Always you need to make sure that is going not much more than -8 or 9. Okay,
the go mode, which is like sports mode,
just pick in there. Okay, that's you'll be safe. Now exporting. Okay, I'm gonna export it. I'm gonna call it test. Okay, so you do have YouTube presets and Vimeo presets and Twitter and all of that. I myself like to export my quality as automatic, so I don't like to do these presets, but you might do, and if I have a quick video, I might just choose to do that. Just make sure that you select the correct settings, whether it's 1080 or 4K. Now, I am on a 1080p timeline, that's why it's defaulting the resolution to 1920 by 1080. And if I want to do a 4K export, what I tend to do is I actually set my timeline to 4K. It's as simple as changing the timeline. I bring my playback to off. All my grading should have been done and everything should be done at this stage, so I don't really need to worry about performance. Make sure that I have both audio and video ticked, and I have quality on automatic. On advanced settings, I usually like to again do sRGB, and that would be it. Okay, actually not from QuickTime but MP4. I would then hit add and render queue, and then from then on you hit render. And what this is going to be doing, and even though this footage was shot at 1080 and this was shot at 4K, and there is screen recording at 4K, but it's just basically gonna render it all and export it as 4K. And with that being said, this is it. This is your basic editing. I've given you enough to get started. Let me know in the comments below. This is everything that I think you need to get started with DaVinci Resolve. And yes, you can do a lot more complex things in terms of editing, grading, graphics and sound, but these are the basics that will get you started. I do have this other video here in which I go through ways to speed up your workflow in DaVinci Resolve. I think you might find that interesting. And with that being said, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up, it helps with the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you in the next video.